Welcome in, football fans, to the 423 Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Bouchard. It's just going to be me today. Brett is on vacation, went down to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where he is, unfortunately for me, eating a ton of seafood, which I am extremely jealous of, so I'm going to be giving him crap all week for that. But yeah, just me today, Memorial Day weekend show. Hopefully everyone's having a great holiday weekend. I know I am. Played a little golf, ate some really good food, had a few beers here and there. Just good fun all around. But we have a little bit to talk about today. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible because, again, it's Memorial Day. Hopefully you guys are out, barbecuing or doing whatever fun stuff you want to do for Memorial Day. And you probably don't want to listen to me ramble that much by myself without Brett here. So we're going to keep it kind of short. Today I'm just going to basically go through my initial rankings for QBs, running backs, and wide receivers. I'm just going to go through the top 10s really, really briefly, and then we'll wrap up the show at the end. So, just a few things to get off the checklist. Hunter Henry suffered a torn ACL in OTAs. This is heartbreaking for not only the Chargers but myself because I thought Hunter Henry was going to have just an enormous fantasy year this year. Antonio Gates is going to be gone. They get Virgil Green in, who's not going to be fantasy relevant at all. I thought Hunter Henry was going to take that step forward this year, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. He will miss the entire 2018 season. So obviously we're going to have to adjust Phillip Rivers in the rankings a little bit. Keenan Allen, again, he's not going to go up much more than what he did last year. He was a wide receiver 3. So, well, you'll see that reflected in some of our rankings, especially our tight end rankings. Might have some guys moved up where Hunter Henry would have been. Sticking with tight ends, Packers actually go and sign Mercedes Lewis for tight end depth. Obviously, Jimmy Graham was their big free agent acquisition this year. They get rid of Richard Rodgers. He went to the Eagles, so they need depth at the tight end position. And Mercedes Lewis, I mean, he's a veteran, and he's a solid tight end. He's not going to put up that much fantasy numbers, but I expect him to get 2 or 3 touchdowns here and there. I expect him to be productive. Le'Veon Bell is expected to hold out deep into the preseason, kind of similar to what he did last year. I still expect him to play and sign his tag at some point in the preseason, but just something to keep an eye on. It's definitely not the best situation in terms of drafting players like that where you don't know 100% that it's going to happen, but I fully expect Le'Veon Bell to be playing very well for the Steelers come week 1. Buccaneers are actually may take a chance on Adrian Peterson, and I know early on when we did our rookie mock draft, I was very, very high on Ronald Jones. I think I drafted him like 3rd or 4th amongst all of our rookies, which now in the past couple weeks, even before this Adrian Peterson news, I've been kind of going maybe, because they said they were going to split carries with Peyton Barber and Charles Sims, and I don't know, Ronald Jones, I don't know if they have that much faith in him anymore being like the go-to guy. So I don't know, it might be pushing it to say Ronald Jones is even that much of a fantasy option. He's probably going to be like a very, very late round flyer at this point, especially if Adrian Peterson comes in, because they don't really have a running back that's like Adrian Peterson type. I mean, I know Adrian Peterson is like an otherworldly talent, but he's on the older side, but the Bucs really don't have a running back like a big bruiser like that, a guy who can really take the first and second down load every single down. So, or every single drive, I should say. All right, one more thing I need to mention in the news. The NFL approves the new kickoff rules for 2018. This doesn't really affect fantasy that much unless you play in a league where returns count, but I'll just go over it real quick. Basically, this is, again, you can go look at the detailed ruling of what they changed and everything, but this is just a very, very simple explanation of what has happened with the new kickoff rules. So, no running starts on kickoffs, so the basically you see when the kicking team lines up, they get a good 5-yard head start, running start to get down the field. So that they're taking that away to hopefully limit the hard collisions that occur. Let's see, you also have to have at least 8 players within the 15 yards of the kick. That's the receiving team. So 8 players have to be within 15 yards of the kick. So we're going to see only 3 guys back on the kicking team or on the receiving team. And then we have receiving team cannot block in the 15-yard zone until the ball is touched or hits the ground. I'm getting tired of all these. I mean, we'll talk more in depth when Brett gets back and I can actually have a debate about this. I'm not really sure how Brett feels about it, but I just don't like all these like ticky-tacky rules that they're making and changing things. I know it's supposed to make things safer, but honestly, if you want to make things safer, you want to limit things from limit, I guess, plays in general from happening. And what I see with these kickoff rules, I think that there's going to be even more returns. I think there's going to be onside kicks a lot more frequently, which, again, those are some hard hits. They might not be as hard as full speed kick returns, but you're talking about on onside kicks, people are getting blindsided left and right because you're all like, you got 11 guys looking up for the ball, trying to pick it off the bounce, and they're getting laid out. I think there's going to be a lot more of that, and I don't know, it's hard to gauge how this is going to work until we see the preseason and until we see games and how teams are going to work with this. But, I mean, just take, if I'm reading this rule right, which, I mean, it's pretty plain and simple, I think, but receiving team can't block in the 15-yard zone until the ball is touched or hit the ground. So if you have a good enough kicker, we've seen it, or I look back at the national championship game between Alabama and Clemson a few years back, where they did the onside kick late in the game, where it was basically like a pooch kick. It never hit the ground. It barely went 10 yards, but it didn't go 15 like this rule would say. So you're basically saying that the receiving team can't block any of those players until it reaches the 15. So if you, or if it hits the ground. So basically you're saying that if you have a good enough kicker to do a pooch kick and make it go exactly 10 yards, then that team can't touch you. I mean, I feel like, guys like Bill Belichick, they are going to find loopholes in this very, very I wouldn't say subjective, but ticky-tacky and I'm just going to say crappy rules. So I don't see these rules being very helpful. I think it's going to cause a lot of problems. But again, we're just going to have to wait till preseason to see how all this plays out. Okay, time to get into the first look at my initial rankings. Again, these are just mine. They're not Brett's. We're not doing a consensus yet. We're both working on them almost every day, trying to really, really solidify what we want from our rankings at the moment. So, these are just my first look at the rankings. I'm probably going to change them right after this show. I might talk myself out of them during this show, but this is going to be really quick. I'm going to go through them. Just top 10 QBs, running backs, and wide receivers. So, QBs first. Number 1, Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to change until he retires, basically. Aaron Rodgers he's the best quarterback in football right now. Even though the pieces might not be there all the time, he can make it happen week in and week out, as long as he's healthy. That's the one big concern, obviously, with the collarbone last year. But if he's out there, he is going to absolutely light up the league. You got Devontae Adams taking a big step up last year. You got Randall Cobb, who is one of Rodgers' favorite targets. Jimmy Graham's added. They got new rookie wide receivers coming in. It's always good when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. So, number 1 on the list, Aaron Rodgers. Number 2, Russell Wilson. Most touchdowns in 2017. I thought he should have easily been in the MVP discussion. I would have picked him over Tom Brady. Again, led the league in touchdowns and had hardly anything to work with. No offensive line, no running game, just Doug Baldwin and a few other receivers that really were Russell Wilson's only weapons. Number 3, Carson Wentz. Had an MVP season last year before the ACL injury. He was my pick to win MVP regardless of the injury, but I think Carson Wentz is going to come back better than ever. They just won the Super Bowl. I know Nick Foles is the big hero, but Carson Wentz is the guy. The offensive line is great. The weapons around him, great. I expect Carson Wentz to still put up top 3 fantasy numbers next year. Number 4, Deshaun Watson, another guy with an ACL injury. Arguably an MVP season as well that he was brewing up there for a little while. He didn't play near as many games as Carson Wentz did, but the games we did see Watson in were spectacular. DeAndre Hopkins was putting up huge numbers. Lamar Miller was even putting up huge numbers. That offense was just ticking, just clicking on all cylinders, and I expect that to be the same this year, and we're probably, I say probably because I know Deshaun Watson hasn't really been the healthiest guy, even in his college career, so I'm going to say probably get a full season of Deshaun Watson, which is easily going to put up a top 5 fantasy season. Number 5, you probably wonder where this guy was. He's still in the top 5. Tom Brady, reigning MVP. Again, that wasn't my pick for MVP. I know it wasn't a lot of people's picks for MVP, but he's still putting up huge numbers. Led the league in passing yards last year. Only 8 interceptions, over 25 touchdowns, or over 30 touchdowns, excuse me. And even though the weapons might not be there year after year, I know they got rid of Brandon Cooks. Julian Edelman will be back. Rob Gronkowski is always there. They find a way to get things done up in New England. Bill Belichick, it's year in and year out, Bill Belichick gets it done. Number 6 on our list, Drew Brees. Drew Brees, only 23 touchdowns last year, but that offense is so good. It's so efficient. They have, obviously, the new toy in Alvin Kamara from last year. Mark Ingram's going to be suspended for the first 4 games, but he'll be back and clicking again. Michael Thomas is a fantastic weapon. They got Cameron Meredith, which I think is a great acquisition. And I expect, and not to mention Ben Watson at the tight end position, who is often overlooked as well. So Drew Brees, only 23 touchdowns last year. I'm not really worried. I expect him to put up 30 this year. Number 7, Cam Newton. Cam Newton, top four QB 5 out of the last 7 years. So this guy, he continues to put up fantasy numbers. It's a lot to do with his legs. I don't think his passing ability is even close to par, but he puts up the fantasy numbers because of his legs and because every now and then he gets that arm going, and it really, really, really shows with the fantasy production. Number 8, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was a QB6 last year in Washington. Expect more balance in Minnesota. So I know you're saying, he was a QB6 in Washington. Going to Minnesota, a better team, he should be even higher, or at least a QB6. But I have him at 8 here because I think Minnesota is going to be a lot less pass-heavy than the Washington Redskins were last year. They're not going to have to come from behind all that much with that great defense. And Dalvin Cook is going to be, again, I think the focal point in that offense, as long as he stays healthy, which hopefully he does. And but still, Kirk Cousins, I still believe he'll put up top 10 QB numbers next year. All right, number 9, Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger, he's not really, I don't know, he hasn't really shown that he can be a top 10 guy the past couple years, which is weird, but I can't bet against him with all the weapons he has. Lev Bell, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, it's too good to pass up. And Ben Roethlisberger, I think, is a very, very good quarterback for this upcoming season. Number 10, rounding out the top 10, I went back and forth on this many times. But I settled on Andrew Luck. The shoulder injury is still horrifying. I don't know what to make of it yet. He's still not even throwing, so it's going to be hard to tell. But if he's healthy, he's an easy top 5 QB. So I have him at 10 because, again, the injury is a big concern. But if he's healthy, plays all year, he's a top 5 guy, no-brainer. The other guy I was considering at 9 or 10, ahead of Roethlisberger or Luck, was Phillip Rivers. The Hunter Henry thing did affect my ranking here. I don't think it's going to hurt Rivers that much, but because I still like Rivers, but I do believe it hurts a little bit because he really needs that. He loves his tight end, and Virgil Green is not going to be that guy. So maybe Antonio Gates comes back, and then I'll adjust my rankings accordingly with Phillip Rivers. Okay, so that's all the QBs. I'll go through those one more time. Number 1, we got Aaron Rodgers. 2, Russell Wilson. Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Kirk Cousins, Ben Roethlisberger, and Andrew Luck. Okay, moving on to running backs. Number 1, Todd Gurley. Number 1 running back last year. That offense is actually solidified now. I think it's a well-oiled machine. Sean McVay is really stepping things up in L.A. Almost said St. Louis, but in L.A. But Todd Gurley last year outscored the number 2 running back by 70 points. Todd Gurley, we've always thought of him as the guy who's going to get a lot of yards on the ground, but he added over 700 yards through the air last year. And if you add that to what Todd Gurley can do on the ground, it's going to be just phenomenal. Todd Gurley is arguably one of the best running backs in football, and I expect him to continue his high production from last year and be the number 1 running back in fantasy. Number 2, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, I think it's 1A, 1B there. You could switch them. I switched them a few times. I'll probably switch them again, honestly. But Le'Veon Bell, the only reason I used to have Lev Bell above Gurley was because, or in previous years, was because Le'Veon Bell caught so many balls out of the backfield. But Gurley's doing that now, so Le'Veon Bell, I have him at 2. But honestly, you could switch them 1A, 1B there. Number 3, David Johnson missed most of last year with a wrist injury, but David Johnson is still easily, in my opinion, I think he's the most talented back in football right now. I think he's just a physical freak. He can do everything that Gurley can do. He can do everything that Lev Bell can do, but I just think the offense in Arizona is not as good. However, the entire offense goes through David Johnson. He says he wants to do 1,000 season this year. He missed out 2 years ago. I have no reason to believe that he can't do that. Number 4, Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott, I can't bet against the guy. With that offensive line, I don't really like the offense that well. I think Dallas is going to take a major step back this year, losing a lot of weapons and trying to find their identity. I don't think Jason Garrett should honestly have that job, but Ezekiel Elliott's still a very good running back, and that offensive line is incredibly talented. So I expect Ezekiel Elliott to honestly probably lead the league in rushing next year. Number 5, Kareem Hunt, the guy who led the league in rushing last year, as a rookie, mind you. Expect some regression, but I still love Kareem Hunt in 2018. Easily my favorite sophomore player coming into the season. Number 6, the guy that a lot of people have way higher than they should, in my opinion. I love the guy. He's super talented, but Alvin Kamara, I have at number 6. No Mark Ingram for 4 games, so that's a plus for Kamara, but there's no way he can keep up the touchdown production. It's just absolutely unsustainable. 6.4% touchdown rate. That is miles ahead of anyone else. I still think he's going to get used a lot. He's going to get a lot of touches, but I think most of his value last year came from him scoring touchdowns left and right. And I mean, I expect him to score quite a few this year, but I just don't see it happening like he did last year. All right, number 7, Leonard Fournette. Fantastic rookie year last year, overshadowed by Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara, but Leonard Fournette is a phenomenal running back. He even missed a few games and still finished, I believe, as the number 7 running back in standard scoring. So Leonard Fournette, that Jaguars offense, they still run through that man. They really don't want Blake Bortles throwing the ball all that much, especially with the lack of wide receiver weapons they have now. So Leonard Fournette, the only issue Fournette might have is they might start stacking the box even more with him because Blake Bortles is an okay quarterback. He's a decent quarterback in my opinion, nothing spectacular, and the wide receivers just aren't there. Number 8, Melvin Gordon. Chargers are a dangerous team, especially on defense, and Gordon is going to be the focal point of that offense. Hunter Henry's already gone, so there goes your middle of the field, short yard guy. So Melvin Gordon, I think, honestly, you might think, where is that Hunter Henry production going to go? I think it's going to come in the form of more Melvin Ingram on the ground. So that defense stepping up in a big way, I think, is going to help the Chargers offense slow things down and really run things through Melvin Gordon. Number 9, first rookie on the list, Saquon Barkley. I expect high production from the guy this year, and a ton of touches. I know the Giants have always been more of or in the past couple years, have been very pass-heavy, but they've always wanted to stick back to the run, back to the Tiki Barber days, Ahmad Bradshaw, Brandon Jacob days even. But Saquon Barkley, I mean, there are going to be so many holes that are just going to open up for him just because of the receivers on the outside. Odell Beckham, if he stays healthy, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram now. You have super talented players on this Giants team. They get a left tackle this year in Nate Soldier. Saquon Barkley, I expect a big year from him. Definitely a top 10 year. Number 10, LaShawn McCoy. I love Shady, but I hate that offense. He would be a whole lot higher if I knew, one, whether A.J. McCarron or Josh Allen was going to be the quarterback, if I knew they actually had a decent offensive line going, because Richie Incognito is no longer with the team, and the Bills, I think, they're a mess right now. They don't really have receivers that they can trust week in and week out. LaShawn McCoy, he's going to get the touches. I'm afraid it might be too much. He's getting on the older side, might get injured for a few games. But, yeah, again, I love Shady. I just hate that offense. Okay, so that's all the running backs. Again, go through them one more time. Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Saquon Barkley, and LaShawn McCoy. Dalvin Cook was almost on the list. Not quite. I got him at 11 right now. All right, wide receivers. And then we'll wrap this up, trying to make it quick. Number 1, Antonio Brown. Never bet against the best. He's, in my opinion, the best wide receiver we've seen since Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice and Randy Moss, excuse me. But Antonio Brown, much more of a Jerry Rice style player anyway. But 4 straight top 3 fantasy finishes. It's going to keep on happening as long as Ben stays healthy. I expect Antonio Brown to put up number 1 fantasy numbers. Number 2, the guy who finished number 1 last year, DeAndre Hopkins. League-leading 13 touchdowns, and he lost Deshaun Watson early and had to deal with Tom Savage for a majority of the year, but still put up phenomenal numbers, even with Deshaun Watson out. But Deshaun Watson, again, I think he's going to play all year this year, hopefully, and we're going to see huge numbers out of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm excited because I've always thought DeAndre Hopkins was one of the more talented guys in the league. He just hasn't had the quarterback to back it up, but now he does, and DeAndre Hopkins just all hands on deck for that man. Number 3, Odell Beckham Jr. Missed most of 2017, but he's still the super talent we love to hate and we hate to love. So Odell Beckham with a lot of, again, same argument for Saquon Barkley, a lot of pieces being added. Odell Beckham is going to have a fantastic 2018 season. Number 4, Julio Jones. Only 3 touchdowns in 2017. The touchdowns are just, I don't know what it is. They're just not showing up for Julio, but the yards are still there, which is what you want for a wide receiver. You don't want to rely on touchdowns all the time. It's nice when they do get the touchdowns, but the fact that Julio can still put up a top 10 season just basically on yards alone is fantastic. Number 5, Michael Thomas quietly put up a wide receiver 8 season last year. I know the passing game wasn't really the talk of the town for the Saints last year, as I mentioned with Drew Brees. It was more the Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram show, but I fully expect Michael Thomas to consistently put up numbers like he did last year. Number 6 on our list, my list, I should say, Davante Adams. 10 touchdowns last year. 7 of those came without Aaron Rodgers. So Brett Hundley was throwing those. Just imagine what he can do with Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past Davante Adams to score 15 touchdowns this year. Jordy Nelson is gone. Davante Adams is the guy. Jimmy Graham's going to score quite a few as well. Randall Cobb will have some here and there, but I expect Davante Adams to have a huge, huge season with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. And he just got paid, so you know he's happy. Keenan Allen, number 7. Keenan Allen. Just stay healthy. Just stay healthy, Keenan Allen. And he can easily repeat his top 3 wide receiver performance from last year. No Hunter Henry, so targets, and no Hunter Henry, no Antonio Gates. Targets are going to be aplenty for Keenan Allen, as they always are. He's Philip Rivers' favorite guy now, and I expect him to continue to put up big numbers. Number 8, A.J. Green. Barely over 1,000 yards last year, but double-digit touchdowns, very, very possible for this year. Still a super, super talent in this league. I know he's been kind of forgotten in that awful Bengals offense, or awful Bengals team, I should say. Andy Dalton is probably on the decline in terms of how much longer he's going to be the starting quarterback there. They still seem to like him, but I don't know. AJ Green is basically the only go-to guy that they have on that offense at the moment. Number 9, Adam Thielen. In my opinion, the most underrated wide receiver and maybe most underrated player in football. And now he has a huge upgrade at the QB position. Kirk Cousins going there now. Case Keenum had a fantastic year last year, but Adam Thielen, I think, is just sky's the limit for the guy this year. He is so smart, so fast, cuts on a dime, great body control, great hands, everything you want from a receiver. Adam Thielen is going to have a monster 2018 year. Number 10, wrapping it up, Doug Baldwin. Don't overlook what Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin can do. I know that Seattle has lost a ton of pieces, and that can be scary at times. They still don't have an offensive line, really. They might have a run game with Rashad Penny, but I expect the Seattle defense to struggle this year. I expect the Seahawks to have to throw a ton, and Doug Baldwin just keeps on being the consistent guy that Russell Wilson can trust. 3 straight top 13 seasons for Doug Baldwin, and I expect him to continue that in 2018. Okay, I'll go through the wide receivers one more time. Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Davante Adams, Keenan Allen, A.J. Green, Adam Thielen, and Doug Baldwin. So, that is my top 10 for QBs, running backs, and wide receivers. Again, these are very early rankings. We're still not even out of OTAs yet. We're not even into training camp. This is, again, Memorial Day weekend, so we're not that deep into football yet, but this is just the initial rankings thus far. Hopefully in the coming weeks we'll continue to update our rankings. We'll get Brett's in here. hopefully get a consensus ranking going at some point. So, just a few things to mention before I close it out. We still have the giveaway going on. T.Y. Hilton's signed 8x10 photo. The giveaway ends on June 1st, so you have until then to enter the giveaway. All you have to do is go to @the423football on Twitter and follow and retweet our giveaway tweet. And if you refer a friend, you get an additional entry into the giveaway. So make sure to do that, especially all you Colts fans out there. And even if you aren't, T.Y. Hilton signed photo, pretty cool. And the winner will be announced on next Monday's show. So Brett should be back, and we'll be announcing the winner at that time. So I guess that's all I have for you guys today. Again, happy Memorial Day. Hopefully you're having a good time on your holiday weekend. We'll be back next week, again, with Brett. Hopefully he's back. I'm going to be still pissed at him for going off to the beach and eating a ton of seafood without me. But anyway, make sure you follow us on Twitter @the423football, like us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. Give us a like, leave your comments and reviews. Thanks for listening. We are the 423 Football Podcast.